And now we turn to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That is Syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks, both joining us from their homes. Hello to both of you. I want to start with President Trump today ordering the nation's governors to open up houses of worship, saying there's nothing they should do to prevent churches, synagogues, and mosques from opening up. Mark, the president told the governors that if they don't go along with this, he's going to override them, although it's not clear he has the authority to do that. What do you make of the president's really relentless push to get the country to open up, his leadership at this moment in this pandemic?
Well, Judy, the churches are an intriguing and complex problem unto themselves. That someone would order the churches to open, and the reality is that the biggest concern has been gatherings of 10 or more people, and churches frequently involve a lot more than 10 people in close quarters, and they also that problem of separation. The president commitment as a churchgoer brings to mind Tom Wolfe's great line about making the world safe for hypocrisy. This seems to be more political than ecclesiastical or theological on his part.
And David, I want to ask you to weigh in too, and I want to bring in the fact that we are seeing, as the president pushes harder and harder for the country to open up, the support for this is breaking along partisan lines. We had a new poll this week, NewsHour, NPR, Marist, showing that more Republicans are with the president, more Democrats are more cautious. How do you look at all this?
Yeah, first, the president is not subtle in his culture war fighting. He wanted to defend Christmas against the alleged war on Christmas, and now he's doing this. It's a pretty naked attempt to try to appeal to evangelical voters. Churches happen to be one of the places where we've seen a lot of super spreading. One of the Korean churches was was one of the worst things that happened, and so that's it's just foolish. The second foolishness is that a national policy here is just not a good policy. This is very context specific. This virus is very decentralized. It hits one place, it doesn't hit another. So every decision that should be made, in my view, should be at the local possibilist level. And so Trump is just, it's just politics. It's just words out of his mouth.
Mark, in terms of the president's overall determination to get the country to open up, is this something that in the long run he looks stronger as a leader for having done this?
Well, Judy, I think the president understandably wants to switch the subject. It's interesting. ABC News is issued each month people's confidence in the president's leadership and their trust of him on handling the coronavirus. It reached a high of 54% in March, and it dropped down to 44%, and now in the latest in May, it's at 39%. So the president wants to get off his coronavirus shepherding and get back. He hopes to an economy which was his calling card for re-election, and that somehow in the next 6 months he could. 5 months, I guess now, in a couple of weeks, that it could revitalize confidence and optimism in the economy and show some progress. That's it. I mean, it hasn't worked for him as Surgeon General, and he's got to try and do it as the economic chief.
And just quickly on this, David, one other thing, a lot of people commenting when the president goes out, as he is trying to, he's not wearing a mask. Does it matter that the president doesn't?
Yeah, that's exceptionally poor leadership. You lead by example. That's elementary school leadership. I think the worst thing that could happen right now is that we opening and not opening became a partisan issue. Republicans and Democrats do differ, but not all that much. You still get 77% of the country supporting social distancing. In our polarized age, you just don't get that much. If you look at the movement in red and blue states, there's no real difference in how people are behaving. There's a significant distant difference in how people see the future. Democrats, by some gigantic percentage, 80 or 90%, say the worst is still ahead of us. Republicans, by some gigantic percentage, say the worst is still behind us. But the fact is, the opening up is happening, and it's happening in all 50 states, and it's going to happen everywhere. And it's not a political decision. It's a question of striking a balance between safety and economic, opportunity. And so it's not an ideological issue. It's just a delicate balance that will be different in every single place.
Well, it is a political year. It's a presidential election year. Both the president and Joe Biden in the last couple of days gotten in hot water for some statements they've made. I want to first let you hear what Joe Biden said this morning. He was being interviewed by a radio host who goes by the name Charlemagne the God. And here's what Joe Biden said.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none.
So after Vice President Biden, Mark, said, if you're not voting for me, then you're not black. Here's what he said a few hours later. He called into a conference of the Black U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
I've never, ever, ever taken the African-American community for granted, and I shouldn't have been such a wise guy. I shouldn't have been so cavalier. And
does something like this, Mark, hurt him?
It hurts. I think he corrected it quickly, but it was a serious mistake, Judy. It showed, first of all, a sense of entitlement that black vote, African American vote, that somehow that they have to vote for Joe Biden, and that was wrong, and it was haughty, and it had a certain arrogance about it, and quite bluntly, in America, this marvelous mixing bowl of a country, whites don't get to tell blacks what being black means. And I think that was a mistake on Joe Biden's part.
David?
Yeah, Tim Scott, the African-American Republican senator from South Carolina, had a good tweet. He said 1.3 million African-Americans voted for Donald Trump, and it didn't make them any less black. It's just a bad rule in general to say someone is less black, someone's less Jewish, someone's less Catholic. These are just tropes we don't need. And so he said something. He was trying to be funny in a show that's very edgy, and he apologized for it. So to have a president who apologizes, that might be a relief to a lot of people.
And so, Mark, the president got in some hot water himself. He was in Michigan yesterday visiting a Ford assembly plant. He referred to Henry Ford, the founder, of course, of the company, spoke about what great bloodlines he had, which a lot of people picked up on. Henry Ford was known to be anti-Semitic. He praised Adolf Hitler back in the late 1930s. How does this add or not to our understanding of President Trump?
Well, it's either he's stupid, unaware of Henry Ford, and talking in code language about bloodlines, which just smack of eugenics and racial superiority doctrines, and which Henry Ford was a major pamphleteer. I mean, he wasn't a casual anti-Semite. He was a practicing and convinced anti-Semite who accepted the cross of the German Eagle Award from the Nazis in 1938. I mean, so it wasn't just a casual thing. So it was on Trump. It showed either the insensitivity or it's some sort of a subtle whistle talk to white racists or white supremacists that he admires them.
David, do you think it hurts the president?
No, I'm going with ignorance on this one. First, when he does dog whistles, Trump is not subtle about it, so I'm not sure why he would start being subtle now. I just think, the guy doesn't read books. And so to know the history of Henry Ford, to know what he did in the 20s and 30s and what sort of person he was, would require reading a history book. And it could be that he knew all this, but I don't think you see it watching cable TV 10 hours a day. So I'm going to give him the benefit of that. He just didn't know.
So while we're talking about the election, the contest between these two men, Mark, the president has been on a campaign lately against mail-in voting. This is something Democrats are talking up. The president is saying it leads to fraud. It's illegal. Is this something that could end up a serious issue in the fall in November?
Well, it could be an issue, Judy, but this is not the opening salvo. Just to point out, it has been a Republican organized effort for more than the last decade to limit the number of voting precincts, to make registration more difficult, to introduce photo ID requirements, to all of this totally bogus and fraudulent idea of voter imitation, and that there are people voting many times under several identities. The most exhaustive study on this subject was done by Loyola University Law School, and between 2004 and 2014, they got 31 documented cases of voter fraud, a billion ballots cast in those 10 years. So this is just a way of trying to discourage and make more difficult. He criticized the Secretary of State of Michigan for sending out applications for absentee voting to all the voters of Michigan. But at the same time, Judy, he didn't mention Nebraska, Idaho, Iowa, South Dakota, where similar letters have been sent by the Secretary of State, all of whom are Republican states. So it's a suppress the turnout, not to encourage people to vote, to discourage people to vote.
David, there is no real evidence, serious substantive evidence of voter fraud in connection with mail-in voting. So how do you see this?
Yeah, no, there isn't. Encouraging people to vote is good. Discouraging people to vote is bad. We live in a democracy. Voting is a civic act that we should be encouraged. I'm also struck not only by the wrongness of it, but by, in my view, the stupidity of it for Republicans. They've got it in their head they need to suppress voting. But if you look at who likes mail-in voting, as Mark said, it's a lot of Western states. They don't want to drive so far in normal times, and now they don't want to endanger themselves. Mitt Romney had a comment that in Utah, he said, we overwhelmingly vote by mail, and it works pretty well for us. If you look at Trump voters, he's got a lot of rural voters, and he's got, frankly, a lot of disengaged voters, low information voters who aren't too active in politics, but who showed up for Donald Trump in 2016. It seems to me he want to lower the barriers to voting in order to keep those people engaged with him. It's all mystifying.
All right. Well, I wanted to get to the inspectors general. Maybe you want to say something in 10 seconds. The president in 6 weeks, Mark, has gotten rid of 4 different inspectors general. It's unfair to ask you about it, but maybe 3 words each.
Well, it's obvious that the president, Susan Collins, Senator from Maine, was right. The president was quite chastened by the impeachment experience and is far less arrogant, hubristic, and overreaching. This is just unforgivable.
And David,
following out state capacity bad for America. It was sort of a haiku.
We'll take haiku. Thank you both. My apology for not giving you more time on that one. David Brooks, Mark Shields, we thank you.